Artemi Panarin comes up with a hat trick in Detroit to lead the Rangers to a 5-2 win over the Red Wings. Plus, Victor Mancini scores his first career goal. What will the Rangers do, and what should the Rangers do once Ryan Lindgren is able to return?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1163 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the Raiders go into Detroit and post a pretty convincing 5-2 win over the Red Wings. A couple of things that maybe we can nitpick. The Rangers can do a little bit better, but for the most part, a really solid evening for the Blue Shirts, who are now 3-0-1 to start the season. And of course, the Rangers were led by Artemi Panarin, who absolutely went off in this game, continued his white-hot start to the season with a hat trick and an assist. And a question I always ask myself as the host of this podcast is, do I not talk about Artemi Panarin enough? You know, it's one of those things where you kind of just pencil him into the lineup and you don't worry about it. You know, his production is going to be off the charts, and he's going to do a fantastic job for this team, and more than capable of carrying this team offensively. We know how he can elevate the game of like everybody that he plays with, whether it's, Trocheck and Lafreniere right now, Ryan Strome in the past, Jesper Foss in the past, basically anybody that's ever shared a line with Artemi Panarin since he's come to the New York Rangers. And he ends up in this game with a hat trick and the one assist as well. And he now holds a Ranger record with 4 consecutive multi-point games to start the season. No Ranger in history had ever done that before Panarin last night. And I figure, why stop at 4? The way he's going right now, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he extended that streak a little bit further. But to kind of take you through his night and, kind of highlight all these goals here, we'll do that first. And then we're also going to talk about why I don't think any of us should ever take Artemi Panarin for granted. And I'm including myself in that as much as anybody else. Like I said, it's one of those things where, I probably don't talk about him as much as I should because you just expect the greatness, you expect the excellence. And I'm trying to figure out like, oh man, who's the 6th defenseman going to be? We're going to talk about that a little bit later in today's episode. But with Panarin, yeah, man, I mean, he just goes out there and does his thing pretty much every night. But as far as, his big night here, scores the first goal of the game. Rangers were getting dominated early in this game. And that is something that I alluded to just a second ago. There's a couple of things we can nitpick from this game against the Red Wings, and that's one of them. It's yet another slow start. The Raiders basically have not had a good start to a game yet this season, despite being 3-0-1. So that's probably like, if there's one trend early in the season that kind of like irks you a little bit, it's probably that. But regardless, Artemi Panarin kind of came to the rescue there, and the Rangers found their game soon after. Great job by Lafreniere along the boards. He's able to knock a puck down when Detroit was trying to work it out of the zone. That sets up Trocheck to pass across the ice to Panarin, and Panarin buries it from the left side, 1-0. Panarin circled the net here. Great hockey instincts. Just kind of got lost in the flow of the play and was all by himself there. You don't want to leave Artemi Panarin that wide open. The Red Wings did, and they paid the price for it. Goal 2, Rangers back on the power play, and you've got Lafreniere. He was tripped in the neutral zone to set up this power play. And then Trocheck wins a faceoff, goes behind his back, up the boards to Panarin. Panarin over to Fox. Fox back to Panarin. Panarin creeps in, shoots a wrist shot, and scores top shelf into the far side of the net over the right shoulder of our old friend Cam Talbot. Rough night for Talbot. Kind of felt for him a little bit, but you can't feel too bad. Your team needs to go out there and win, but hopefully better days ahead for Cam Talbot. Then you get the assist on the power play. Rangers are cycling the puck. Panarin shoots with every intention, I think, of having Vincent Trocheck deflect this shot, and he did, and he scored, and that made it 3-1 in favor of the Rangers. And then the hat trick. And honestly, once Panarin had scored 2 goals and both of them coming in the first period, did anyone really have any doubt as to whether or not Panarin would end up with a hat trick in this game? I mean, at that point, I pretty much marked him down for it. And I figured the only person that could stop Artemi Panarin from getting a hat trick in this game was Artemi Panarin. Because we know there's times, we've talked about it before, he's selfless to a fault. He always wants to put it on a tee for any of his buddies, any of his teammates, especially when the Rangers have a comfortable lead and they were starting to get into that territory and starting to take over the game at this point in the game. But thankfully, he was able to shoot here. You've got Fox over to Panarin for a one-timer, and this is a goal before it even made it to Panarin, because you could see a good chunk of the net was open. Panarin's winding back. He's about to crank a one-timer, and he's not going to miss. That's the thing. He's got such a good shot and such an accurate shot. He's absolutely going to score on this pretty much every single time. And, of course, that made it 4-1. And, again, the bottom line is you don't want to take Artemi Panarin for granted. And I know there's going to be some people that say, oh, well, what about the playoffs? And look, has Artemi Panarin been the same dominant player in the playoffs as he's been in the regular season for the Rangers? The answer is no. I think that's also true, though, of a lot of superstar players. It's a lot more difficult when every inch of the ice is as contested as it is during the Stanley Cup playoffs to really go off and really have these incredible nights. But I think by that same token, because there's people that really get on Panarin for how he's done in the playoffs, you can't sit here and tell me that he's done nothing of any note to help the Rangers in the playoffs. He's not quite the same level as the regular season, but he was battling last year in the playoffs. 3 years ago, that was a rough showing for Panarin. He had 16 points in 20 games, and for me, that's always kind of the saving grace of that playoff run for Panarin. He was still producing offensively, and of course, the Game 7 overtime winner against Pittsburgh, we can never forget that. But it seemed like he just wasn't playing instinctive hockey. He was kind of overthinking things, turning the puck over a good amount as well. And then the year after that against the Devils, complete disaster for Panarin, but it was basically a complete disaster for every Ranger not named Igor Shesterkin that year. And then this past year, Artemi Panarin, playing some grittier hockey and playing more of a playoff style this past season than I thought he ever had in the postseason. Came up with a lot of big moments. Another overtime winner, Game 3 against the Carolina Hurricanes. Ended up with, I forget how many points it was, but it was right around a point per game. I think it was like 15 points in 16 games, somewhere in that ballpark. So again, it's not like he's never done anything. And I think there's times where he's almost a victim of how good he is in the regular season. Because when you're putting up 90 plus points every season, and in the case of last year, well over 100 points, he might do the same thing again this year. People are going to look at that. And if you tail off a little bit in the playoffs, it's going to be a storyline. But the bottom line, Panarin has done well in the playoffs. And I know a lot of people are going to judge him based on that. And hopefully the Rangers can get back and he can be the one leading the charge for this team come playoff time. But again, cannot overstate this. Possibly Artemi Panarin, you don't want to take him for granted, because what this guy does on a hockey rink is not normal. The talent is just off the charts. Somehow just seems to get better and better with every passing season. And it is worth pointing out, there's been a lot of talk among all of us Ranger fans about contract extensions and what's a fair contract for Igor Shesterkin and how much should he make per season. And this goalie's making that much, so Igor can only make that much. You guys know how it's been. And I even did an episode, I think it was the one right before this one, about why I think the Rangers should get ahead of things and try to extend Alexis Lafreniere as soon as possible. But both of them are in the last year of their contract. Igor's obviously a UFA. Lafreniere will be an RFA with arbitration rights. Panarin's got 2 years left on his deal, but after that, he's a UFA. And that's going to be very, very interesting, because Panarin will be 34 at the end of his contract. Do the Rangers and Panarin come to some kind of an agreement on an extension between now and then? It's at least possible, but I do think the Rangers need to be careful when it comes to that, because, again, he will be 34 at that point, and you have to keep the contract, whatever it is, the amount of years, the amount of dollars, you gotta tread lightly. I don't think that you can probably afford to pay him $11.6 million per season, which is what he's making right now. You can't do that on his next contract because he will be getting older. I think he's worth every penny of that right now, because the guy goes out and just brings it every single night. But again, you're going to have to be careful if you're the Rangers. But the bottom line, what we got some time between now and Panarin becoming a free agent, but there are only 2 years left on his current deal. It's possible that those will be his last 2 years as a Ranger. And I'm just telling everybody right now to enjoy this, because not too many teams have a player that can do the kinds of things that Artemi Panarin can do on the ice. And again, the theme of this episode, this segment at least, do not take Artemi Panarin for granted. And again, I'm saying that to myself as much as anybody else, because it's easy to just kind of forget how great he is, because he just goes out there and does it every single night. But he is a special, special player. And that was on full display in this game against the Red Wings. So going to keep everything rolling just a second. I want to shift our attention to Jonathan Quick. He obviously made his season debut, had a really nice night for the Rangers. Came up big for the Rangers early in this game as well. Going to elaborate on all that and also talk about Victor Mancini a little bit later in today's episode, and more specifically what the Rangers could, should, and will do once Ryan Lindgren is healthy and ready to return to the lineup. And we're going to do all that fun stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our good friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can enter now and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, let's go keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers, as always, for sticking with the show and obviously enjoying the Rangers' hot start to the season, 3-0-1 thus far. And for the everydayers, we've got Rangers at Leafs. That's going to happen on Saturday night at 7 p.m. Going to be breaking down whatever happens in that game in our next episode. And then we've got an episode that I actually already recorded, been trying to get to it for some time, but it's the stories that all of you shared with me about, your experience watching the Rangers during their run in the Stanley Cup playoffs this past year. Those are always among my favorite episodes, and that one's no exception. So definitely looking forward to dropping that one as well. But for right now, got to go ahead, keep our focus on this game and shift our attention ever so slightly to Jonathan Quick. We talked about a couple of lineup decisions and roster moves that the Rangers might have to consider in our most recent episode. And one of the questions that I threw out there while we were doing that was, okay, when does Jonathan Quick get his first start of the season? Now, Igor Shesterkin has been very, very good. Utah, obviously that's not a great game. He ends up giving up 6 goals in that one. I would only put maybe like 1 or 2 of them like squarely on Igor Shesterkin. There was one goal that was definitely soft, and I'm sure he would have liked it back. So I've got no problem with Igor Shesterkin playing net for the New York Rangers, and I hope they can come to an agreement and he can keep doing that for a very long time. But as far as Quick is concerned, it felt like the time was right for him to get his first start. Last season, he made his first start in the 5th game of the year, and this season, he's making his first start in the 4th game of the year. And just looking at the schedule, there aren't any back-to-backs for a while. The first back-to-back is in very, very late November, so you won't really have an opportunity to do it there, at least not for some time. And obviously, Quick's got to play before then. But you're looking at the Rangers schedule, and I'm seeing, 2 straight games against Detroit. Granted, they were 3 days apart, but it's still 2 straight games against Detroit. Let's throw Igor at them in one game. Let's throw Quick at them in the next game. And looking ahead then, Toronto is next on the docket for the Rangers. They play the Leafs on Saturday. Obviously, a lot of explosive players on that team, very high-powered offensive team. So to me, you want Igor Shesterkin on the ice for that game. This just seemed to have Jonathan Quick's name written all over it. And Peter Laviolette apparently felt the same way. He said, I got to play him sooner or later. Why not tonight? That's not an exact quote, but paraphrasing there, that's pretty much what he said. Quick did awesome. Made 29 saves on 31 shots and was tested early in this game. There were a couple of just wild scrambles in the Ranger crease. Quick did benefit a little bit by Detroit maybe overpassing and just for some reason or another not being able to finish their chances on the doorstep. He also got a little bit of help on one play when it was still scoreless. Really nice play by both Ranger defensemen. I think Trouba had a little bit more to do with it than Schneider, but there was a pass, there's a guy in front of the net, and who was it? It's in my notes here somewhere. So it was Seider. Seider's got a chance to shoot in front. Everybody's thinking that he's going to shoot, and then kind of slips a backdoor pass over to Comfer, and this is a wide open net, but Trouba did a nice job tying up his stick. Schneider, kind of interrupted it a little bit as well, but they get the puck out of the net. But the bottom line, he got a little bit of help here from his teammates here, but Jonathan Quick was awesome in this game. His mobility was really tested, and when it comes to older goalies, you always worry about that a little bit, but there was one play where the Red Wings shot wide, it hit the boards, bounced, back out toward the front of the net, and Quick was all over it. He had moved up in his crease, had to dive back to get on top of the puck, so that was awesome to see. And then this was huge too. Detroit ended up with a very long power play, including a 5-on-3 for 42 seconds, and Quick made a couple of really nice saves during this sequence here as well. So the Ranger penalty kill really coming through, and obviously, cliche or not, you need your goalie to be your best penalty killer, and I think Jonathan Quick was during that long power play for Detroit. You never know what can happen. I mean, if Detroit gets a goal there on that power play, maybe they're off and running, and maybe this game, goes in a completely different direction, and things could have turned out quite a bit differently. But Quick was on point all night. Another really nice save that he made that I got to highlight at the start of the third period. Here go the Rangers with a slow start to a period, right? About 30 seconds in, Red Wings get a rush into the zone. There's a centering pass, and Quick is able to slide hard to his left and prevent the shot from going in, got on top of it, and froze the puck. So that was obviously nice to see as well. When it comes to Jonathan Quick, I feel very fortunate as a Ranger fan that he's still here and that he's been able to adapt his game to adjusting to life as a backup goalie, because that's what he's going to be as a member of the New York Rangers. Obviously, one of the all-time greats, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, playoff performer. I mean, you name it, this guy has done it. And it's really nice that, he's still in the fold with this team, albeit for a slightly higher price this year than last year. But one thing I'm going to throw out there right now, and I did this about a month ago, give or take, we did an episode where I took a look at every player on the Rangers that I projected to make the opening night roster. And obviously we had Quick on there. And I made one bold or semi-bold prediction for every player on the team. And my prediction for Quick, and I'm going to repeat it right here, I think Jonathan Quick in season this year will sign another one-year extension with the New York Rangers. Now, obviously, I don't know that for sure. Jonathan Quick has given no indication that he's looking at retirement. I mean, he is 38 right now. I believe he turns 39 in January, but obviously still getting the job done. A really nice season last year as the Ranger backup. And I just feel like everything you hear about this guy behind the scenes in the locker room, he's one of those glue guys and one of those guys that's a very important voice in that locker room. Obviously, he's been there and done that when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to winning Stanley Cup championships. And I've always said this too, and knock on wood here, but if anything were to ever happen to Igor Shesterkin during the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'm very happy to take my chances with Jonathan Quick stepping into some playoff games as opposed to just some random veteran who's just gone from this team to that team. And I'd rather roll with Jonathan Quick in a situation like that. And one other reason why, in addition to everything I just said, I think the Rangers will look to re-sign Jonathan Quick, and hopefully, he's open to that if he wants to keep playing. Igor Shesterkin, you might have heard, he has not been able to come to terms with the Rangers on a contract extension. And that despite the fact that the Rangers offered him 8 years at $11 million per season, would have made him the highest paid NHL goalie of all time. No deal has been reached between the two sides. If Jonathan Quick re-signs during the season, it gives the Rangers slightly, and emphasis on slightly, but just slightly more leverage on Igor Shesterkin. Because, hey, this guy's done pretty well for us. He's an all-time great. He's under contract for next year. We could roll with Jonathan Quick next year, and maybe we bring in somebody else, and there's a little bit of a timeshare. I don't know. I don't know that Igor and his camp are really going to bite on that and really think that, oh, man, they re-signed Quick, who is going to be 39 at that time. I better, re-sign quickly. That might not work, and that's why I said slightly more leverage for the New York Rangers. But everything else being equal, why not? I think Jonathan Quick is fit in very nicely with this team. Like I said before, adapted to his role as a backup and a nice insurance policy. We saw him last year when Igor was really struggling. He started 3 straight games. He did great. So yeah, we're lucky to have him, man. There's a lot of goalies. There's a lot of teams around the NHL that, forget about backup goalies. There might be a couple of teams at least that don't have even a starting goalie who's as good as Jonathan Quick. So the fact that we've got him here as the backup, just an absolute luxury for this Ranger team. And glad that he's back and glad that he had a nice debut for the season last night against Detroit. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. We talked about Panarin. We talked about Quick. We're going to shift our attention to a rookie, and that would, of course, be Victor Mancini. We're going to talk about him scoring his first goal, how he's done thus far as a member of the Rangers, and what the plan can, should, and will be when Ryan Lindgren gets healthy and re-enters the fold. It sounds like he might not be that far away, so we'll talk about all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to go ahead and let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. And we also want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even faster and even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff, to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. You've got Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., all in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Love that feature. And the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, figure we can go ahead and close out today's episode by discussing Victor Mancini, who's obviously off to a pretty solid start. In his Ranger debut here, basically kind of took the entire franchise really by storm, the fan base. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. He is just 4 games in, but the bottom line, this guy brought it from the second that, his skate blades touched the ice during the rookie games, during the training camp, during the preseason. This guy basically forced his way onto the Ranger team, and it helped a little bit. You don't wish for injury, obviously, but with Ryan Lindgren getting injured, that kind of opened up the door a little bit for Mancini, but he kicked it down. He did the rest of the work. And in this game, scoring his first career NHL goal. And really, this should be his second career NHL goal. That game against Utah, he scored from the point in that one. And, Wes McCauley, hey, everybody, look at me. He overturns the goal immediately. And due to the fact that, the Utah goalie basically brushed against Matt Rempe at the top of the goalie crease. And, if by the letter of the law, if that's the right call, then that's a rule that needs to be changed. But the bottom line, unfortunate, because Mancini thought he had his first career goal there. It was taken away, but he comes through here, first career goal proper in this game here against Detroit. And man, the Rangers really worked for this goal. We're going to take a slight detour to really put over the third line and how well they've played, but it's all coming back to Mancini here. But the Ranger third line has been really, really good to start the season. And a true blue-collar goal here. You've got Cooley. He's along the half boards on the left side. He takes a hit, but he's still able to kind of, force the puck ahead to Philip Hedl. The puck popped up in the air, so Hedl had to glove it down, but he's able to do that. Hedl tries to move to his right, behind the net there. He's met with some resistance. There's a couple of Red Wings kind of bearing down on him. And then Kakko gets there. So you've basically got like a 2-on-2 fight for the puck here along the boards behind the net. Kakko prevents the Red Wings from moving the puck along the boards. He's able to knock it down. So that kind of keeps the play alive for the Rangers. And the puck battle is still on at that point. It gets back to Hedl. Hedl's still behind the net. Hedl goes back to the left side and then passes back to the right to Kakko. Kakko at this point, he's still on the boards. He carries the puck up the boards on the right side, and he's got a defender bearing down on him, but he's able to shield him with the puck. And then Kakko moves it back to Mancini. Mancini just takes a shot from the blue line, middle of the ice there, and scores, beats Talbot clean, and gives the Rangers the goal to put them up ahead by, what was it at that point? Was that 4-1 or 5-1? I'm getting everything mixed up now. I think that was 5-1 at that point. But bottom line, that was awesome. And yeah, because this was right after the Panarin hat trick. So this had to have been the last goal. So 5-1 in favor of the Rangers. And great moment for Mancini. Obviously, the first NHL goal, the first NHL point, always a special moment. And Mancini gets to do so in his hometown of Detroit. So very, very cool to see that. And Mancini, he's being trusted by this Ranger coaching staff. He was a +1 in this game. He's a +2 for the season. But what stood out for me, I always like checking the time on the ice, especially for defensemen. I just like to see how it's distributed. And Mancini actually ended up with more ice time than Zach Jones. He had 17 minutes, 37 seconds of ice time, which is the most time that Mancini has spent on the ice in any of the first 4 games. So obviously, this is a guy that, I was going to say slowly but surely, but not even. He just surely is earning the trust of the coaching staff. They trust him in some big spots, and they've rewarded him with more ice time. Now here, obviously the Rangers had a big lead. They're up by 3 goals. This put them up by 4 goals. So maybe his increase in ice time also had to do with the fact that the Rangers, had a comfortable lead and they gave him more ice time near the end of this game. But even still, Mancini obviously, winning over the Ranger coaching staff very, very, very quickly here. This also begs the question, what happens when Ryan Lindgren returns? What happens when Ryan Lindgren is back in this lineup? I know there's a lot of people that are not going to like what I'm about to say. However, when that happens, the correct move is to send Mancini to the AHL. And it pains me to say that because I like Mancini. He won me over throughout the entire preseason. Like he won over a lot of you as well. But Ryan Lindgren has been a very, very solid player, solid defenseman, one of those, heart and soul kind of players. That's his nickname. When they were giving out the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award, they referred to him as the heart and soul of the Rangers. We've called him that before on this podcast. Somebody that has been a fixture in the Rangers top four for the last several seasons, obviously some very successful seasons for the New York Rangers. So once Ryan Lindgren gets back, he's not going to get scratched. He's not going to get waived. He's not going to get traded. Nothing like that is going to happen. That'd be like very, very extreme, any of those things. Just tough as nails player who deserves to get back into the lineup. So I think that will certainly happen. As far as other options, if you want to try to figure out a way to not send Mancini down to the AHL, Jacob Trouba is not coming out of the lineup. It's just not going to happen. He's the Ranger captain making $8 million per season. Some people were throwing around the idea of him being the healthy scratch. I just don't see them doing that even for a single game. And if we're being fair here, Jacob Trouba is actually off to a pretty good start to the season. He still does have those moments, and specifically in the Utah game, where he sort of just gets lost in the defensive zone and kind of just takes himself out of the play. And it's like, why are you going over there and leaving the front of the net wide open? That guy's in the corner. He's not going to beat you over there. So he does have those moments from time to time, but he's racked up a decent amount of assists and overall just played well. And I think has done a pretty nice job with Braden Schneider. I talked about earlier when we were discussing Quick, how Trouba and Schneider to a lesser extent kind of teamed up to prevent who was it? Now I'm forgetting which Detroit player was again. Prevent Comfer from scoring into what was basically a wide open net there. So Trouba has mostly done well. $8 million a season. Well, probably not, but we'll take it. It's a lot better than certainly he ended last season. So we'll definitely take it. The one way that maybe you could keep Mancini, I hate throwing this out there because it's so unfair to Zach Jones, but you could make Zach Jones once again the odd man out. But I don't really want to do that either because I feel like Jones has kind of earned this opportunity. He played well again throughout the entire preseason. He's played well to start the season as well. He certainly has not done anything to lose his job in the lineup. And the other thing here too, and you can work around this, but one thing that makes this unlikely, at least a little bit unlikely, is that if you go with Jones over Mancini and you put Ryan Lindgren back into the lineup over Mancini, then you would still have an imbalance between righty and lefty defensemen. Whereas if you're able to get Ryan Lindgren back and you have Jones in the lineup, I think I said that backwards. If you keep Mancini in the lineup, that's when you'd have the imbalance. But if Ryan Lindgren comes back and Zach Jones stays in the lineup and Mancini's out, then you have three of each, three lefties and three righties. So, I don't know. To me, Zach Jones, it's his time. He hasn't done anything to lose his job. And, I think Mancini could probably benefit from a little bit more time in the AHL. I mean, he's done a great job thus far, but that's not the worst thing ever. And even if Mancini does end up getting sent down, I think that we certainly have not seen the last of him this season. You can't count on all six Ranger defensemen to stay healthy for the rest of the year. And the only other option that I can think of is you could have a situation where you waive Chad Ruhwedel and with the purposes of trying to assign him to the Wolfpack, but that's not a good idea because if you do that, now you've got Mancini presumably is a seventh defenseman. You don't want to see him in that role. You want Mancini to go down to the AHL. If he's not going to be in the Ranger lineup, you want him playing hockey, and he can at least do that for the Hartford Wolfpack. I guess if you were to waive Ruhwedel, you could then have like a little bit of a rotation, Jones and Mancini in and out of the lineup, but I'm not really feeling that either. I think, when it's all said and done, when Ryan Lindgren gets back, you're going to see Mancini as kind of the odd man out and sent down. And it's unfortunate because he hasn't done anything to really lose his spot. But Ranger fans should still be feeling good about this, even if that's what happens, because Ryan Lindgren will be back in the lineup. That's first and foremost. And secondly, we've seen what Victor Mancini can do. We've seen that he does seem to have a role on this Ranger team in the future. This is somebody that was drafted at the very tail end of the fifth round during his draft class year. I think he was like the third to last pick in the fifth round. So somebody that's looking like a steal for this Ranger team, and somebody that, for just getting his first taste of NHL hockey is basically passive flying colors. The other question that this all begs, once Ryan Lindgren is back, is if Mancini's the odd man out, then how do they line up with Ryan Lindgren? Because they've been going with Miller and Fox as a top pairing, and I could see them maybe sticking with that. It's a pairing that's kind of been kicked around by Ranger fans in recent seasons, although we've never seen the Rangers really, once in a while, sure, but they've never really gotten any rope together. Now, I will say, K'Andre Miller did have a really rough turnover in this game that led to Detroit's first goal. He was carrying the puck out of the Ranger zone. The Wings basically just picked his pocket, and it led to a goal. But for the most part, that pairing is mostly clicked. I also get the feeling, once Lindgren is back, that they will probably want to move Schneider back to the right side, because once again, that would give you 3 lefties and 3 righties. So you'd be afforded the opportunity to do that. Even though Schneider's done completely fine on the left side, I get the feeling they'll probably put him back to his natural position, especially when you have 3 lefties and 3 righties, like I just mentioned. So I'm thinking what they'll probably do, I think they might actually stick with Miller and Fox, and I'd be okay giving that a little bit more of a trial run because, like I said, we've never really seen that for very long in the past. So they stick with Miller and Fox. I think probably the second pairing is Lindgren and Trouba, because that's just kind of by default. That's your tried and true top 4 right there. Fox, Miller, Lindgren, and Trouba. However, you want whoever you want to be playing with whoever. So I think they'll stick with those 2, and then probably Jones and Schneider on the third pairing. And again, what that does, it allows every defenseman to move back to their natural side. You've got 3 lefties, you got 3 righties, and you go from there. The Rangers could always go back to their tried and true. They could go Lindgren and Fox, they could go Miller and Trouba, or even Miller and Schneider, and then Jones and Schneider or Jones and Trouba, depending on how you want to line up. But bottom line is they have some options, and that's definitely a good thing. And I feel for Mancini that he very likely will be sent back to the AHL when Ryan Lindgren returns. But we've seen some good things from Victor Mancini. And we do know, as much as I like Ryan Lindgren, he is a UFA at the end of the season. And it feels like they probably see Mancini as a much, much cheaper alternative, because obviously Mancini is playing on his ELC, making 6 figures. Ryan Lindgren is at $4.5 million a season this year. If he signs a multi-year deal, Lindgren, whether it's with the Rangers or anybody else, I don't know that he'll get that much per season, but it'll be in that ballpark. And I just feel like the Rangers, given the cap situation, they're going to see fit to let Ryan Lindgren walk, which kind of bums me out a little bit. But I feel like it's one of those things where it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And it becomes even more likely that that'll happen now that the Rangers have seen, okay, hey, Victor Mancini, it looks like he can play in the NHL. That'll probably make them a little bit more at ease when it comes to potentially letting Ryan Lindgren walk in free agency after the season ends, which mixed feelings, like I said, but I can kind of see the writing on the wall right now. And I'm sure a lot of you probably can as well. But yeah, I mean, things are good right now, man. The Rangers 3-0-1 to start the season, 7 points out of a possible 8, doing a lot of things well. Like I said before, the one issue that this team seems to be having right now, or maybe the main issue at least, is the slow starts. I don't think that they've had an ideal first 10 minutes of the game in really any of these games. So that's something that you hope that they can change going forward. It's nice that they're coming back, and it's nice that they're eventually settling into their game and finding themselves and figuring out a way to win games. But you can't always survive that. You get off to a rough first 10 minutes against a team like the Panthers, you're going to be in some trouble. So hopefully that's something that they can correct going forward. The other thing that you got to love, this team has now scored 20 goals in their first 4 games. Or if you want to take away the empty netter, we can say 19 goals in 4 games. Either way, very, very impressive. A lot of guys, off to a solid start offensively. They have now held their opponents to 2 goals or fewer in 3 of the 4 games that they've played. And, even the game that they lost in overtime, that was unfortunate. And, you watch that game, it's like they can play better than this. But they were chasing the game, as Peter Laviolette said. And, you do have to give some credit to Utah. They played very well in that one. But you also have to give some credit to the Rangers in that one, because they were down by 2 goals on multiple occasions in that game. They at least found a way to come back, tie the game, send it into overtime, and at least salvage a point out of it. So, yeah, good stuff to start the season. And hopefully everybody out there is feeling good and looking forward to the next one. But, yep, that'll do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, this @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.